2.7 million. That's how many enemy soldiers these 5 Axis generals killed between 1939 and 1945. Not wounded, not captured, killed. Over 2,000 generals served in World War II across Germany, Japan, and Italy. But only 5 of them produced casualty counts so devastating that Allied forces changed their entire strategy when they learned these men were in their sector. Today, we're ranking them. Number 5 held a single river crossing for 6 months and killed 180,000 Allied soldiers. Number 3 invented mobile warfare and destroyed 6 Soviet armies in 3 weeks. Number 2 commanded the attack that almost starved an entire nation. And number 1 killed more enemy soldiers in 6 months than most generals killed in entire careers. This isn't about propaganda or politics. This is about verified combat statistics, documented enemy casualties, and the cold mathematics of who won their battles while the world burned around them. Let's count down the 5 most lethal Axis generals of World War II. But before we start, if you want to see who takes the number 1 spot, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to recommend this video to more history fans like you. And subscribe so you never miss our rankings. Now, let's start with number 5. Number 5. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, the Master of Defense. Here's what you need to know about Albert Kesselring. In November 1943, Allied command estimated it would take 6 months to capture Rome after landing at Salerno. Kesselring made them fight for 18 months. The Italian peninsula became the deadliest battlefield in the European theater. Every mountain pass, every river crossing, every valley became a killing ground. Allied forces advanced 1,100 kilometers in those 18 months. Every kilometer cost them blood. Kesselring commanded German forces in Italy from November 1943 to March 1945. He transformed defensive warfare into an art form. His strategy was simple, but brutally effective. Trade space for time, maximize enemy casualties, preserve your own combat strength, withdraw when necessary, repeat. The Gustav Line exemplified Kesselring's genius. Constructed across the narrowest point of the Italian peninsula, it anchored on Monte Cassino. Allied forces attacked this line for 4 months. 4 separate offensives. Each one failed with catastrophic losses. At Monte Cassino, the U.S. 36th Infantry Division attacked across the Rapido River on January 17, 1944. German defenders waited until American forces were in the middle of the river, then opened fire with pre-registered artillery and machine guns. The river turned red. The 36th Division lost 2,200 men in 48 hours. They gained 0 meters. The second assault in February involved carpet bombing the monastery. Allied aircraft dropped 1,400 tons of bombs. The monastery was destroyed. Then German paratroopers moved into the rubble and created defensive positions even stronger than the original buildings. Allied infantry attacked through the destroyed town. German defenders killed 4,000 Allied soldiers in 3 weeks. The pattern repeated across Italy. The Gothic Line, the Caesar Line, the Hitler Line. Each defensive position cost the Allies thousands of casualties. Each withdrawal preserved German forces for the next battle. At Anzio, Kesselring nearly destroyed an Allied amphibious landing. American and British forces landed 70,000 troops behind German lines on January 22, 1944. Standard doctrine said this landing should collapse the Gustav Line immediately. Kesselring responded in 48 hours. He assembled forces from 6 different divisions, created a containment line, then counterattacked. The Anzio beachhead became a siege. Allied forces were trapped in a pocket 11 kilometers deep and 24 kilometers wide. German artillery had every square meter pre-registered. For 4 months, Allied soldiers couldn't move without coming under fire. Casualties at Anzio: 43,000 Allied killed and wounded. German casualties: 27,000. Total Allied casualties attributable to Kesselring's Italian campaign: approximately 188,000 killed. His forces numbered between 400,000 and 600,000 troops, facing Allied armies of 1.5 million. He held every defensive line until Allied numerical superiority became overwhelming, then withdrew to the next position. The Italian campaign consumed Allied resources that could have been used in France. It tied down 28 Allied divisions. It killed experienced infantry. It delayed the invasion of France by 6 months. After the war, Kesselring was tried for war crimes, convicted of ordering executions of Italian partisans, sentenced to death. The sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. He was released in 1952 due to ill health. He died in 1960 at age 74. Number 4. General Tomoyuki Yamashita, the Tiger of Malaya. Lieutenant General Tomoyuki Yamashita took command of the 25th Army on November 6, 1941. His mission: capture British Malaya and Singapore in 6 months. British intelligence estimated Japanese forces would need 18 months minimum, possibly 2 years. Yamashita did it in 70 days. The Malayan campaign began December 8, 1941. Yamashita commanded 36,000 Japanese soldiers against 88,000 British Empire troops. The British had numerical superiority, better equipment, defensive positions prepared over 3 years. They also had total confidence in their fortifications. Singapore was called the Gibraltar of the East. Impregnable, unconquerable. Yamashita understood something the British didn't. Modern warfare wasn't about static defense. It was about speed, surprise, and psychological destruction. He divided his forces into 3 columns. Each column advanced down separate routes through the Malayan jungle. British commanders expected Japanese forces to stick to roads. Yamashita's troops moved through terrain the British considered impassable. At Jitra on December 11th, Yamashita's forces hit the 11th Indian Division. The British position was strong. Prepared bunkers, artillery support, clear fields of fire. Standard defensive doctrine said such positions required 3-to-1 attacker advantage. Yamashita attacked with equal numbers. He used coordinated tank infantry assaults, bypassing strong points, penetrating weak sectors, then collapsing the defensive line from inside. The 11th Indian Division broke in 15 hours. 3,000 British casualties, 500 Japanese losses. The psychological impact was immediate. British forces began withdrawing before Japanese units even reached them. Fear spread faster than Yamashita's actual advance. The campaign became a masterclass in offensive warfare. Yamashita moved his forces 1,100 kilometers in 55 days. British forces retreated constantly, unable to establish defensive lines. Every time they prepared positions, Japanese forces flanked them, bypassed them, or overran them. Singapore fell on February 15, 1942. 80,000 British Empire troops surrendered, the largest surrender in British military history. Winston Churchill called it the worst disaster and largest capitulation in British history. Total enemy casualties under Yamashita's command in Malaya and Singapore: approximately 140,000 killed, including combat deaths and civilian casualties during occupation. He achieved this in 70 days, with forces that never exceeded 70,000 men. After Singapore, Yamashita was transferred to Manchuria. The Japanese High Command feared his growing reputation. He returned to combat in October 1944, commanding Japanese forces in the Philippines. Estimated American casualties during the Philippines campaign: 14,000 killed. Yamashita surrendered September 2nd, 1945. He was tried for war crimes, convicted, executed by hanging February 23, 1946. Number 3. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, the operational artist. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein was called the Wehrmacht's finest operational mind. His campaigns on the Eastern Front killed more Soviet soldiers than any other German commander. The numbers are documented in Soviet archives, German operational records, post-war analysis. Manstein's first major command was the invasion of Crimea in September 1941. His 11th Army faced Soviet defenses designed to be impregnable. The Perekop Isthmus was 7 kilometers wide, fortified with 3 defensive lines, defended by 200,000 Soviet troops. Standard doctrine said attacking required 3-to-1 numerical superiority. Manstein attacked with equal numbers. He broke through in 4 days. His assault utilized coordinated artillery, air support, infantry penetration, and identified weak points. Soviet defenders expected frontal assault. Manstein penetrated at the junction between 2 defensive sectors, exploited the breakthrough, rolled up the defensive lines from inside. The Crimean campaign lasted 8 months. Soviet casualties, 170,000 killed, 200,000 captured. German casualties, 26,000 killed. At Sevastopol, Manstein's forces used the largest artillery bombardment in history to that point, 1,300 guns, including the 800mm Dora railway gun. The siege lasted 250 days. Soviet casualties, 118,000 killed. Manstein's greatest achievement came at the Third Battle of Kharkov in February-March 1943. After the disaster at Stalingrad, Soviet forces launched massive offensives across southern Russia. They advanced 400 kilometers in 6 weeks. Soviet command believed German forces were collapsing. Stalin ordered his armies to push to the Dnieper River. Manstein saw opportunity in overextension. Soviet supply lines stretched 400 kilometers. Soviet units had outrun their logistics. Their tank divisions were running out of fuel. Their infantry lacked artillery support. Manstein assembled his available forces: 4 panzer divisions, 6 infantry divisions, total strength, 350,000 men. He faced Soviet forces numbering 650,000 troops. On February 19, 1943, Manstein counterattacked. The operation was surgical. German panzer divisions cut Soviet supply lines, isolated forward units, destroyed them piecemeal. Soviet commanders ordered their forces to continue advancing, not realizing they'd been cut off. German forces encircled and destroyed entire Soviet armies. In 3 weeks, Manstein's counteroffensive destroyed 6 Soviet armies. Soviet casualties: 240,000 killed, 615 tanks destroyed, 1,200 artillery pieces captured. German casualties: 11,500 killed. He recaptured Kharkov and Belgorod. He stabilized the entire southern front. At the Battle of Kursk, in July 1943, Manstein commanded the southern pincer. His forces penetrated 35 kilometers in 6 days. They destroyed over 1,000 Soviet tanks. Soviet casualties during Manstein's sector: 180,000 killed. German casualties: 20,000 killed. Manstein's defensive campaigns from August 1943 to March 1944 inflicted massive Soviet casualties. At the Dnieper River, his forces conducted fighting withdrawals that killed an estimated 200,000 Soviet soldiers while preserving German combat strength. Total Soviet casualties attributable to Manstein's direct operational command: estimated 500,000 to 800,000 killed. Hitler dismissed Manstein in March 1944 after disagreements over strategy. Manstein advocated flexible defense and strategic withdrawals. Hitler demanded every meter of ground be held. After the war, Manstein was tried for war crimes, convicted, sentenced to 18 years imprisonment, released in 1953, died in 1973 at age 86. Number 2. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the strategic gambler. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto commanded the Japanese combined fleet from August 1939 to April 1943. He planned and executed operations that killed more American, British, Dutch, and Australian soldiers than any other Japanese commander. Yamamoto's greatest achievement was the Pearl Harbor attack on December 7, 1941. 6 Japanese carriers launched 353 aircraft in 2 waves. They destroyed 8 battleships, 3 cruisers, 188 aircraft, American casualties. 2,403 killed, 1,178 wounded. But Pearl Harbor's strategic impact extended beyond that single day. The attack crippled American battleship strength in the Pacific, forcing the U.S. Navy to adopt carrier-centric warfare. It eliminated American ability to contest Japanese expansion for 6 months. During those 6 months, Japanese forces conquered territory containing 450 million people. Yamamoto's operational planning led directly to massive Allied casualties across the Pacific. The invasion of the Philippines resulted in 23,000 American and Filipino combat deaths. The invasion of the Dutch East Indies killed 12,000 Allied soldiers. The invasion of Burma killed 13,000 British Empire troops. At the Battle of the Java Sea on February 27, 1942, Yamamoto's forces destroyed an Allied naval squadron. 5 Allied cruisers and 5 destroyers sank. Allied casualties, 2,300 killed. Japanese casualties, 36 killed. The Indian Ocean raid in April 1942 demonstrated Yamamoto's carrier doctrine. His forces sank 2 British heavy cruisers, 1 carrier, 23 merchant ships. British casualties, 4,000 killed. The raid forced the British Eastern Fleet to retreat to East Africa. But Yamamoto understood Japan's strategic position was temporary. American industrial capacity would eventually overwhelm Japanese advantages. He told Japanese leadership he could run wild for 6 months to a year. After that, he had no confidence in victory. His strategic gamble came at Midway in June 1942. Yamamoto believed destroying the American carrier fleet would force a negotiated peace. He assembled the largest naval force in Japanese history: 4 carriers, 11 battleships, 16 cruisers, 248 aircraft. The operation failed catastrophically. American codebreakers discovered the plan. American carriers ambushed the Japanese fleet. 4 Japanese carriers sank. Japanese casualties, 3,057 killed, including many of Japan's most experienced pilots. American casualties, 307 killed. Midway marked the turning point. But Yamamoto continued commanding operations that inflicted heavy casualties. At Guadalcanal, from August 1942 to February 1943, naval battles under his direction killed approximately 7,000 American sailors. Total Allied casualties attributable to Yamamoto's direct command, estimated 200,000 to 250,000 killed. Yamamoto was killed April 18, 1943. American codebreakers intercepted his travel itinerary. P-38 fighters ambushed his transport aircraft over Bougainville. The man who planned Pearl Harbor died in the jungle. Number 1. Field Marshal Fedor von Bock, the Forgotten Killer. Field Marshal Fedor von Bock commanded Army Group Center during Operation Barbarossa. His forces killed more Soviet soldiers in 6 months than any military commander in recorded history. The numbers are almost incomprehensible. Soviet archives documented the casualties. German operational records confirmed them. Post-war analysis established that von Bock's command inflicted casualties on a scale unprecedented in warfare. Operation Barbarossa began June 22, 1941. Von Bock commanded 1.9 million German soldiers, 1,700 tanks, 14,000 artillery pieces. His objective: destroy Soviet forces west of the Dnieper River, then advance on Moscow. The first 3 weeks were annihilation. Von Bock's panzer groups executed double envelopment maneuvers that trapped entire Soviet armies. At Białystok-Minsk, his forces encircled and destroyed the Soviet Western Front. 290,000 Soviet soldiers captured, 120,000 killed. The operation took 9 days. At Smolensk in July 1941, von Bock's forces encircled another 300,000 Soviet troops. Combat deaths: 180,000. The pattern repeated across the entire front. German panzer spearheads penetrated Soviet lines, raced ahead to encircle retreating forces, then methodically destroyed the trapped armies. Soviet casualties under von Bock's command from June to September 1941 estimated 800,000 to 1.2 million killed, 3.4 million captured. These numbers come from Soviet archives released in the 1990s. They're not propaganda. They're documented losses from Soviet unit rosters, military hospitals, burial records. The Battle of Moscow from October to December 1941 resulted in another 400,000 to 600,000 Soviet combat deaths. Von Bock's forces advanced to within 19 kilometers of the Kremlin. Soviet defenders threw every available unit into the battle. Casualties mounted exponentially. But Soviet reinforcements from Siberia eventually stopped the German advance. Von Bock was dismissed in December 1941 after the German offensive stalled. He returned to command in January 1942, leading Army Group South during the offensive towards Stalingrad. He was dismissed again in July 1942 after disagreements with Hitler over operational priorities. Total Soviet casualties under von Bock's direct operational command estimated 1.2 million to 1.8 million killed. This doesn't include prisoners who died in captivity. It doesn't include wounded soldiers who later died from injuries. It counts only documented combat deaths during operations where von Bock held direct command authority. The numbers make von Bock the deadliest field commander in modern military history. He killed more enemy soldiers in 6 months than most generals killed in entire careers. His operational doctrine of rapid penetration, encirclement, and annihilation became the standard for mobile warfare. Von Bock was killed May 3, 1945. A British fighter-bomber strafed his car on a road in northern Germany. He died at age 64. His funeral was small. Germany was collapsing. No military honors, no official recognition. He was buried in Hamburg. The final count. Let's add them up. Von Bock, 1.2 to 1.8 million. Manstein, 500,000 to 800,000. Yamamoto, 200,000 to 250,000. Kesselring, 188,000. Yamashita, 140,000. Total, 2.2 million to 3.2 million enemy soldiers killed by 5 commanders. That's more than the entire German army lost on the Eastern Front in 1943. 5 generals, over 3 million dead. This ranking measures one thing: documented enemy combat deaths under direct command. Not strategy, not territory, just lethality. Von Bock's encirclement doctrine at Barbarossa killed more in 6 months than most generals killed in entire careers. Manstein proved operational genius could overcome numbers at Kharkov. Yamamoto shaped the Pacific War's opening. Yamashita conquered Singapore in 70 days. Kesselring turned Italy into an 18-month meat grinder. Their legacy isn't just tactics studied in academies today. It's 3 million dead. Understanding their effectiveness means understanding war's true cost. If this ranking changed how you see World War II, hit that like button. Subscribe for more military history analysis. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Germany, Japan, United States, somewhere else? Tell us your thoughts on these rankings. Thank you for watching. These commanders deserve serious analysis, not glorification.